One of the most popular and controversial stories today from the BBC was an in-depth report about Fort Bliss. And there were many people who called themselves whistleblowers. And there was all of these pretty intense allegations about what's going on in this border facility right now. Here's the thing. It's getting no coverage in the United States. It's a near media blackout in the USA right now as regards to these accusations. Now, some of them are really silly and ridiculous, and we'll laugh at them as we go through this report that the U.S. media apparently doesn't think you should see. Some of them are incredibly intense, and if they're happening, they should be looked into. But if this story came out 2 years ago with a different person in office and in the White House, there would be coverage wall to wall. Mark my words, every newspaper, every major television station, every website that covers news in any way, shape, or fashion would be covering this. NBA players would be changing their jerseys, football players would be issuing statements, and the leagues would be getting behind a movement to stop this immediately. But we have these accusations right now, and it's crickets out there. So first things first, let's go through the report. This is an actor playing one of the whistleblowers. So they really dramatized this. I thought for a second, like, this is one of the people who works at Fort Bliss. This is an actor using their story and telling what this Fort Bliss employee said was the truth.
There are very significant numbers of kids with COVID.
When a child gets COVID, their bed is stripped. That seems normal. They're moved to tents packed with sick children because they're also sick.
I think the crowding is the number one reason that illnesses have spread.
Obviously.
Lice became a very big problem. At one point, when all the girls were consolidated into one tent, the lice were so widespread, they actually had to put the tent into lockdown.
All right, this is not great, right? It's not great to have lice spreading through a tent, but I mean, it's lice. These are people who crossed into this country illegally, and they're processing them, and many of them unkempt from spending days and days trying to get here. And so you're going to have these issues. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. But the accusations get much worse. If it was just lice, I could see the U.S. media going, let's turn a blind eye to that. We don't need to focus on it. You're going to hear a lot more, and you're going to be wondering the same thing. Why is there a media blackout in the U.S. because of this story releasing today? Is everybody lining up together and saying they need to protect the president? Or is something else going on entirely? They said, how many girls were in the tent with the lice?
Were in that tent.
Hundreds and hundreds of girls.
Many children have been in there for over a month. They said some, like this boy, have tried to run away. We met one of the children who was inside. So here's their kid whistleblower.
And I felt very low. I thought that I was not going to get out of there, that I was not going to see my family again.
I want you to remember something. Some of these kids who end up giving reports after they go through these facilities are coached by activists to say exactly what they're saying. There's an intent to make these facilities look worse than they actually are and make all the people who work there look like monsters so that they will create some sort of atmosphere that makes it easier for people to get into the United States of America and breaks down our system of immigration even more than it already is. So just keep that in mind when you hear somebody like this. I'm not saying don't believe him. I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt sometimes.
And sometimes at night, we would cry. During the worst time, I was nearly at the point of committing suicide.
After 5 weeks in detention, he has been reunited with his mother in the U.S., so he got where he was aiming to go. He became severely ill with COVID at the camp and struggled to fully recover.
It was difficult to see a doctor for medicine, and when we went to ask for medicine, they gave us dirty looks, and they always laughed among themselves.
Okay. Children wear wristbands. Yeah, I mean, here come the heavy accusations, right? Children wear wristbands. Oh, no. How will we ever recover from this? Children wear wristbands. They're checked whenever they leave a tent. That makes sense. They're marched to meals, a.k.a. they walk to lunch. Come on, march to meals? Like there's a drill instructor and, 1, 2, 3, 4, hut, do. They're not doing any of this. They're walking.
The food was not well cooked.
The food's not good either.
Sometimes the chicken had blood on it. The meat was very red. We were so hungry we ate it, but we got sick from it.
We're about to hear the most explosive allegations after the silliest. The desert climate is harsh. So they also say, by the way, it sucks to be in the desert. I know. They crossed the desert in many cases to get there.
Crazy. The whole tent starts shaking. Some of the tents open up and sand rushes in. You literally have to shield your whole body from sand. By the end of the day, we are all just covered in dust from head to toe.
All right, now they get to some more aggressive allegations. They've been handed a memory stick containing secret audio recordings of a camp staff meeting.
We have already caught staff with minors inappropriately.
All right, so if this is true, this is an explosive allegation that warrants tons of coverage in the media. We have already caught staff with minors inappropriately, this audio says, right? And it goes on. Is that okay with you guys? No. I hope not. An employee came out of the camp to meet us.
We heard one of the contractors raped a girl at night. DHS mentioned there was a rape and they are giving the girls pregnancy tests. I also heard they just announced the results in front of everyone here. And I heard the other night that another contractor was caught in a boy's tent, doing things with him.
We've been told by the trainers stories at this facility that staff have developed inappropriate relationships with children. Men who've developed relationships with some of the girls, and even some of the women's staff who've developed relationships with boys.
So these are all the anonymous sort of whistleblowing accusations. Here's what the Department of Health and Human Services says. We provide required standards of care for children, such as clean and comfortable sleeping quarters, meals, toiletries, laundry, educational, recreational activities, and access to medical services. That's about as boilerplate as it gets. Staff at Fort Bliss took risks to expose how children are treated. But there are 12,000 children in other camps in the U.S. So that's some of the allegations from this. And it was number one on the BBC website today. It was a big story. U.S. migrant camp kids feel like they're in prison. An investigation by the BBC has found over 2,000 migrant children are being detained in a camp in the Texan desert that's been ridden with disease, overcrowded, and plagued by a shortage of clean clothes and medical care for the children. On and on they go. But when you search the newswire, you find plenty of stories about Fort Bliss. You don't find this story. Nobody is writing stories about these whistleblowers with these damning accusations against these folks who are at Fort Bliss and overall just the immigration process in America. Why is that? Ask yourself honestly, do you think if this story happened 2 years ago, there would be a near media blackout? Aside from one story that I could see over on CBS News that only published a few hours ago, they're finally giving this a little bit of light. The level of distress among migrant boys and girls held by the U.S. government in a tent city in the Texas desert has become so alarming, they're constantly monitored for incidents of self-harm, panic attacks, and escape attempts. People who worked at the federal site told CBS News, so they're speaking out a bit more. Some children held at the large tent complex at Fort Bliss USA Army Base have required one-on-one supervision 24 hours a day to ensure they don't hurt themselves. Others have refused to eat or spend most of their days sleeping on cots. Workers said they saw migrant girls and boys with cut marks on their wrists and arms. Federal officials have become so concerned about migrant teens harming themselves, they banned pencils, pens, scissors, nail clippers, and regular toothbrushes inside tents housing hundreds of children, according to an internal document. Workers at the site say they were even instructed to remove the metal nose clips from N95 face masks because they're worried about what's going on here. Whether any of this is true is almost beside the fact. The real shocker here is that with something so explosive going on, with people out here releasing clips of damning accusations, there is little to no coverage in the U.S. media about this. Why do you think that is? And do you think this is an attempt to cover up these accusations? Do you think it's because the accusations are probably bunk? You think there's nothing to them? I mean, at the beginning of the video, obviously, like pointing out that they're in a desert is ridiculous. We all know that. But the accusations at the end, those audio clips, if those could be verified in some way, that's stuff to look into. But you probably haven't heard about any of this until right this moment when you started watching this video. What are your thoughts? If you want to share the video, I'd love for that. Hit that share button and spread this around to your friends, especially since the media doesn't seem to be willing to do the job that maybe needs to be done here and either debunk this or bring it forward and see if there's any ties to the Biden administration or anybody else. Maybe this is something Kamala Harris can look into when she finally gets down to the border. So give me your thoughts on all of this. And also, if you want videos just like this every single day, make sure you take just a moment of your time and hit follow over on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The News Junkie. Hit the follow button. Subscribe over at youtube.com/The News Junkie. As always, I appreciate you watching this video. I look forward to your comments, and I'll talk to you again real soon.